Kristy and I are here to talk about the, the future of customer experience and the role of personalization. We'll talk a bit about history as well. It's something that in our industry I think we've been working on for a couple of decades now in one way or another. I don't think it's ever been more important than it is right now. Brands are competing not with their peers or even with Amazon and the threat presented there, but they're competing with the expectations brought by our customers. And this is where I think we really have an opportunity to stop the commoditization of our brands and to really latch on to customer experience as the key competitive vector for the world that we live in today. And it's certainly the key to delighting customers and building long and healthy and valuable relationships. So if we're going to compete on experience, I think it's key to start with a strategy. Personalization is certainly the strategy that I believe is most effective. The way that we think about that, the definition that we use at Monetate, is to try to create meaningful interactions with each individual in any moment across every single place where the brand and the customer touch, using absolutely everything that we can possibly know about them, the entire history of the relationship between that customer and brand. And I'm going to hand it over now to Kristy to talk about Office Depot and their experience with this journey to date.
Thank you, David. I want to talk really briefly about Office Depot and just give you some data points there. As Office Depot, we want to provide our customers with those products that make their life easier and offer them those office products and services that wherever they are, where they're working from, whether that's from the office, from the car, it just makes their life more optimal. We work under two brands, Office Depot for our large customer segment and Viking for our SMB customers. And we work in 14 different European countries. In that, I have 5,999 colleagues that work with me, and we generate an annual sale of $1.5 billion. Let's talk about our journey, and especially looking at personalization. Office Depot has a very long history in the e-commerce space, as you can see here behind me. But I have to be honest, at the start, Office Depot traditionally has been a catalog-driven organization, which means that our processes and our way of thinking was very much oriented on the printed media. Going gradually into our e-commerce journey, though, we realized that we needed to make a switch. We needed to make a mindset change. And that's a difficult process. And I think the key turning point was in 2014, where we didn't only say that our e-commerce strategy was key and offline would be supportive. We also changed our internal processes and our organization to really focus on that online-first mentality. When you review your organization, your processes, your data structures, you also need to look at your technology. And in 2014, we realized that, especially in the area of personalization, that the technology we had available was simply lacking. And that is what triggered our engagement with Monetate. Now, tip. Whenever you engage with a technology supplier, think about where you are now and where you want to go. So the path of personalization was one of the first things Office Depot, in collaboration with Monetate, created. And as you can see, it's 5 levels that we wanted to achieve. We started with testing, where Monetate is really powerful, and optimizing our sites based on the test results that we had. Gradually moving on through target, we're now at the stage of segmentation, and I'll show you some examples of what segmentation, how that became to be in Office Depot's campaigns. What is important, though, is that with every level that we stepped up, we saw that the customer experience improved, but also that our business results did the same. And because that's quite a strong story, I'll take you to the next slide, where I think you will gravitate to a certain section on that slide, which is the 15 times ROI. That sounds very promising, but I can tell you it was the target we gave our team at the start of this journey, and they've consistently met their target and at points even exceeded. That's huge, and that shows the power of having a personalized experience offered to your customers. So I want to give you a flavor of what we were able to do with Monetate. You see here two types of campaigns. The first one is geo-based offers. What we do is we pull in external data, like, for example, weather conditions. In a market, if you look at our test country where we piloted this first, the UK can have quite different weather conditions between north and south. And what we did is by ingesting the weather conditions, combining that with the geo-data that we have of our customers, we could ensure that only those customers that in the morning had to scrape the ice of their cars would get this scraper actually presented on that day. So on that day, the offer that we give to our customer becomes really relevant to that personal situation of that segment. A second example is on the right, which is our VIP customer program. We recognize who are our most loyal customers, and when they come to our site, we offer them a banner, as you can see on the left-hand side. It has a direct link to their account information, it has vouchers and specific promotions, and we communicate clearly that this is only for you as a loyal customer. These are just two flavors, just two examples. Many more opportunities exist. We've been able to increase our cross-category penetration significantly by, for example, promoting our products that a customer had never bought before, or the complete opposite. The more rich your buying profile becomes, the more targeted we can become and say, these are the optimal cross-sell products for what you've bought in the past. Taking you to the future. As I said, there is a journey that we've set ourselves. And if I look at the next stage for Office Depot, it's truly moving from segmentation into, on the one hand side, cross-device, cross-channel, and cross-touchpoint personalization, so that we can influence the entire journey of our customers. Second piece is moving much closer to, instead of a segmented communication, to a one-to-one interaction. We're investing heavily in understanding more and more of our customer journeys and understanding the role of the individual here within. I have one significant problem here, though. I have 4 people running the Monetate tool. I think that's a very good sign that we can run this technology with a small team. And of course, we interact with marketing, we interact with merchandising, but running the tool, driving the tool, defining the campaigns, that's 4 people. Now, one problem, when we move into cross-channel, cross-device, cross-touchpoint, as well as a much more personal one-to-one interaction, is volumes. I need to be able to generate much more volumes. And at this point in time, I'm simply not able to even look at taking that next step. And that's why I'm really enthusiastic about the new introduction that Monetate has done, which is the intelligent personalization engine. This, I believe, will take Office Depot into the 4th and 5th steps of our journey. Onto that, I want to hand over to David.
So that engine for the future to solve the challenge that Kristy's just laid out is the Monetate Intelligent Personalization Engine. We made it commercially available just this week, and it will be the key to facilitating the immediate steps that were just described. We've had this challenge, and we're using AI now as a fundamental enabling technology to make unique decisions for each individual. A number of brands have already joined us as early adopters before the commercial launch. And as you can see from this quote from Kristo, that we're already seeing great results and great improvement by making individual decisions customer by customer, decreasing bounce rates, increasing engagement, and driving purchase. But I want to get back to what Kristy said about this challenge around creative and scale. There's a bit of a paradox that I think has held our industry back in its progress toward the dream of one-to-one. Certainly in the phase of optimizing one experience for an entire audience, we saw great ROI with making data-driven decisions and incremental improvement, moving to a better and better experience to meet the needs of that overall audience. With segmentation, we've seen tremendous ROI, as Kristy's described, but for each additional segment, there's more creative. There's more to manage. There's almost a multiplication of the work that goes into optimizing a one-size-fits-all experience. And so it makes the idea of one-to-one really daunting. It says, if we're going to get to a segment of one, if we're going to have individual experiences, individual creatives for each person, I just know that's not possible. We will never get there. It's in no way possible to scale and design an individual experience for each person. And so knowing that end goal is unachievable, I think creates a huge challenge to working at all on a program like this. And it's helped me to think about this problem very differently, and to think about the definition of one-to-one differently. To say that it's not about a bespoke experience for an individual. It's about a bespoke decision. It's about taking everything that we know about the relationship between that individual and brand, everything we know about that individual, and making a decision about what's right for them between the options that we could create. And whether those are 2 or 2,000 doesn't really matter. It's down to making the right decision for the individual. That is an achievable goal. It changes, I think, the entire way of thinking about the path between here and there. Those individual decisions have a lot of complexity to them. I can't see 1,000 of you before you walk in the door, so I don't get a chance to learn what's going to be appropriate when you do come in, because you're completely unique. And we've taken a genetic approach to solving that problem. That we can think of this a bit like DNA and genes. That each person in this room has completely unique DNA, but we all share genes and we share values on those genes. We have genes for height and eye color, hair color, the shape of our ears, and every different aspect. And some of us have similarities on those genes even in this room. But when we look at all of the genes for any one individual in the room, it's different to anyone else. That gave us a path to efficiently learning in order to make individual decisions, even though we don't have the benefit of seeing a bunch of people just like you in advance to learn what might be best for you. So I'll tell you a bit about how that works. By applying that genetic model to the information that we have about customers, we can take each person and learn about the genes that they have and the values that they have on those genes. We learn which genes are important in a decision, and we learn about how those genes might be related to the right decision to take. And then when an individual customer comes into the experience, we can combine our learning about all of the genes that we've seen over everyone to that point into a unique answer for that unique person. And so in this case, we've learned that location, that city, that browsing behavior, and technographics and ad engagement are important. Maybe some factors are not important in the decision. We've learned the relationship between each of these factors and the best alternative. And then when this individual has come into the experience, we've taken her unique set of genes and values, mapped that across all of our learning across millions of customers, and calculated a unique decision for her about the best alternative in that moment. And that's allowed us to create a prediction with a better fit than we could get with a segment or the audience as a whole. One of our early adopter clients from prior to our commercial launch, Club Monaco, put this into practice and did some measurement to understand the incremental benefit to these individual decisions. And you can see that varying the recommendations made on a product detail page lifted revenue by almost 5% by making individual decisions based on that DNA about which set of recommendations were appropriate for a particular customer. Email signups were lifted by over 70% just by changing creative and message and matching those creatives and messages in soliciting the email sign up, using that individual fit to different customers. Office Depot is certainly in good company with the engine. We've had a number of great brands who've worked with us prior to the launch, and you can see some of those brands and some of the successes that we've recorded thus far. Since on Monday this week we released the product commercially, I expect this list will get quite a bit longer than I can fit on one slide soon. We're certainly very excited about the future, and we're looking forward to seeing what all of your brands will be able to achieve with the Monetate Intelligent Personalization engine and with this new way of thinking about one-to-one, thinking about individual decisions as a very achievable end goal of one-to-one, rather than the paradox of the unachievable that we've struggled with. And with that, we're open for questions.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, Kristy. Very interesting approach to the problem that we've all grappled with, that you've got all the data, you've got the imagination, you just don't have the practical way of making some sense of it without just starting to breed lots of people in your marketing department. That doesn't work. So can I ask, who's got a question? Stick your hand up. It's very rare that you get people like this in front of you in a room. As ever, it's the lady on the far side of the room furthest away from the microphone. That's the way these things work. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, if you're making predictions based on sort of past all the other users and customers that are coming in, how long and how much traffic and how much users do you need? Because it's going to be quite a cold start in the beginning, I would imagine. So for a medium or smaller size retailer, yeah, sort of what is the expectations they should have in order for this to really start to kick off and start to work effectively?
Yeah, the question of learning is a really interesting one. The entire challenge of AI is to try to get it at latent information, that sort of nuanced information, and so learning is quite a challenge. The approach that we've taken is, to get technical for a moment, in machine learning, known as an online learning algorithm, which means that we're able to update our understanding of the relationship between these genes and things about people and the experience alternatives moment by moment. And so that the very first interaction on a cold start, we don't know anything, but we're no worse off there than we would be at the beginning of a test. By the time we see the second interaction, we've actually already collected a tiny bit of data. And what we're seeing is that it takes tens of thousands, but not more than that, interactions or sessions before we feel like we've had a chance to really learn about the relationship between these sort of nuanced genes and the alternatives in the average situation. What that means is that there are some brands that have so little traffic that this just isn't a suitable approach. There are situations where it's necessary, where a a marketing campaign might only be active for a very short period of time with very little traffic, it wouldn't be appropriate. But even when campaigns are active for a very short time, if they have significant traffic, we can learn quickly enough. Another factor that's really important is to take a step back and look at the forest from the trees, to say it's not always the detail of, which image might be the best fit. It might be the theme or the creative idea that drove us to select those images in the first place. We had some clients in our early adopter program who had this. They have, flash promotions where they might have only something active for hours or a day. But they were carrying consistent themes, that they might have one category represented consistently in one alternative and another category in another. And they found that the engine can learn about the relationship between customer DNA and the themes, and that when the individual creative within the theme is switched out, that's just fine.
Another person with their hand up. There's a chap at the front here.
Thanks. A question for Kristy. In this journey you've taken since 2014, what's the organisational change that you've had to make to your digital, your marketing, your insight teams as an organisation to be able to make this possible?
And that's a very good question. So what we've really done in the past was have a lot of resources dedicated purely to that offline build. And the number of resources allocated to online was limited. With the 2014 change, we've really decided to invest in the online space, have dedicated resources to online. Before, they would often have mixed channel responsibilities. Now they would really focus only on online, and even if the catalog was late, we wouldn't pull them into a room and say, guys, now start building a page. That was one. Secondly, it was also building additional and new teams around specifically customer insights, which was something Office Depot traditionally hadn't done before. So we have a team that's dedicated to understanding our customer feedback, and we're using tooling and different types of surveys to understand more of our customer. Traditionally, we did that on a market level. Now we're working on an individual user level. So we really ask questions to you when you're on your site. And I think that combination and the decision to invest in these type of teams is fundamental for making that change. Are we there yet? No. And I'm being perfectly honest. It's a very difficult process to go through. And also understanding, in that strategy, how to put that into operations. But by having more insights on our customer, understanding more of their journey, we start feeding that information into the different, other channels like marketing and merchandising, and you can sense that is driving this change forward. Thank you.
Question from a chap at the front here.
Hi, I don't know, I think this is probably a question for yourself. How is the data from this intelligent personalization engine presented to a user? So I'm a merchant. How is that data presented to me, and what's to stop me from using a test sample of data and then going away and doing our own thing?
Yeah, I'll take that as two different questions. I think that the first, interpretability is, I think, key to anything that's actually going to work for marketers and merchants. I don't think Kristy's team would be willing to tolerate a black box, a system that didn't have transparency about what it was doing, and that more importantly, that you couldn't learn or gain insight from. And it's actually one of the biggest challenges technically in building the engine, is that we had to figure out how to make it interpretable when the AI itself fundamentally isn't. And we sort of approached it a bit like trying to solve how the sorting hat in Harry Potter works. The sorting hat's magic. We don't know how it works. We can't cut it open and see how it works. It sorts the children into the different houses at Hogwarts, yet any sort of 6-year-old can point at the houses and tell you how they're different. And that led to our solution. We actually have a second layer of AI that's pointed at just the problem of describing how the resulting groups from the decisions look and how they're different to one another. And so that actually was a pretty unique element to our work. The second part of your question is, why can't we just take those as rules and sort of move from this insight back into segmentation? The answer is the nuance. The answer is that you and I might be similar in a bunch of ways. We might be similar height, gender, and we might be placed in the same segment by some brand. And that at times might be appropriate and might not. But the nuance and the influence of all of the other factors in the details and in the moment mean that it's not as simple as a segment. So segments, I think, are fantastically useful to simplify for the creative process so that we can think about an aspect of difference across the audience, an aspect of heterogeneity in the audience, because it can give us an idea about how different experiences might best serve those different aspects. But when it comes to actually matching those up with people, it's down to person by person. And so if you did take the rules and you just put them in statically, you get actually a pretty small percentage of the lift that you get making individual decisions. It's not worthless, but it's actually a small share. Yeah.
That's a brilliant exposition of my favorite view of the world, that the future is going to be ruled by segmentation and next best action, and everything else just funnels in behind it. Is there any other questions, or shall I wrap up at this stage? I see, lady at the front. I shall hand you my microphone.
Just a quick one. I was interested in what you said about having personnel who specifically work at your company who are just concentrating on Monetate. Can you tell me about how that came about? Did you always envisage that you would have internal personnel working on Monetate rather than letting Monetate handle that work for you?
I think that was one of the core decisions to really make that online world work for us is to invest in capable resources driving these type of tools. And I think that's what David was also referring to. It's a collaboration. It's not like here's the insights and go and do. It's really we can influence, we can decide together with marketing what's our strategy. Do we want to focus on those loyal customers, or do we want to focus on a different segment? We can support the marketing strategy by having that interaction. So for us, the investment in teams like personalization, user insights, but also on-site merchandising capabilities, and having teams drive that and move into the more, traditional parts of our organization that are struggling to go onto that online journey has helped us to be more successful. If it's just marketeers, if it's just a marketeer, they might struggle making that technology adaptation, and that's where my operations team is for. I'm the e-commerce operations team, and we support putting the vision of the marketeer into technology and making that work for them. So yes, that was absolutely a conscious decision to build resources around it.
Well, I think that's been a really interesting session, giving you some insight in how to manage the complexity that troubles many of us, and I'd like to thank David and Kristy. Thank you.